welcome to NSC 111 Foundation of Nursing. I remain your facilitator, Dr. Elizabeth Joseph Shevon. I hope you enjoyed the public holiday and the weekend. Today we'll be looking at infection control. Today we'll be discussing infection control. What do we mean by infection? Infection is the multiplication of microorganisms or infectious agents within the body tissue, causing a disease in the host, in which the host may be human being or an animal. What happens under these circumstances depends on the difference in magnitude between two opposing forces, namely those of infection and the host resistance. That is, the infection itself and the individual or the animal that have contact with the infectious agent. The outcome is determined by the ability of the microorganism to adhere, invade, and damage the host versus the host defense mechanism. It may be severe or mild. There are various groups of microorganisms that interact with human beings to cause infection. These include bacteria, viruses, fungi, protozoa, and parasitic worms. Human beings and animals play host to population of microorganisms which lives on the skin or mucous membrane. The microorganisms that are capable of causing disease are termed pathogen or infectious agents. Certain aspects of bacteria regularly inhibit different parts of the body where they constitute the normal flora of the area. For instance, the E. coli, which is the normal flora within the GIT. While some are harmful, others are not, but they ensure their survival and growth. For microorganisms that are within their normal environment, like that of the GIT, where we have the E. coli, within the alimentary canal, within the GIT, there is no problem. But the moment it finds its way to somewhere else, like the urinary tract or the external genitalia of a woman, before you know it starts causing infection. What do we want to achieve today? At the end of today's class, you should be able to describe the cause of infection, enumerate the chain of events which link the reservoir of infectious agent with the susceptible host, discuss the factors that predispose one to infection, analyze the measures for infection control. Infection phases. The first phase is incubation phase. In the incubation phase, this is the period between the entry of microorganism to the body and the initial clinical manifestation of the infection. At this stage, the microorganism multiplies while the host defense rises up to the challenge to counter the infection. The host is asymptomatic of the disease but shed off the infection agent and may become carrier. When the host overcomes the causative organism, no obvious signs and symptoms of the disease is apparent. Only laboratory examination can detect the host. In another one, during the incubation period, there is no signs and symptoms, but within that period, the individual that carry the microorganism, that how the microorganism can infect somebody else. And at this phase, the body of the host tries to fight the organism, the microorganism. By the time the host overcomes this microorganism, there won't be any signs and symptoms of the disease that is apparent to anyone by then. The second phase is the acute illness phase. Here, the disease reaches its full intensity due to greater force exerted on the host by the invading of microorganism. The duration of the acute illness varies from few hours to weeks, and the disease will manifest. In another word, at this time, the host was not able to fight the microorganism. The next phase is convalescent phase. This is the stage when the clinical manifestation of the disease subsided. Most infectious disease is self-limiting, and recovery take place over a short and defined period of time. The prognosis depend on the disease and management, while death can occur from some highly virulent disease or due to complications. Types of infection. We have local infection. When infection is confined to an area or spot, it doesn't generalize. That is local infection. Like we have in boil, where you just see that particular area being reddish, that is local infection. When you talk about generalized infection, infection that is disseminated throughout the body, while focal infection is when infection spread from a confined area to other parts of the body. Then the next one is mixed infection. When infection is due to more than one type of pathogen, is referred to as mixed infection. There is primary infection, the infection of a host by another type of infection during the course of an infection. Infection may also be sudden, that is acute, or manifest later with high resultant effect, which is chronic. Chain of infection. Infection results from chain of events which link the reservoir of infection agent with the susceptible host. And these are three of them. We have the mode of escape from the reservoir, mode of escape from the reservoir to mode of transmission, and model of entry into the susceptible host. So this is what happened. The causative organism, fungi or whatever, look for a reservoir, which could be human being or animal or insect or object, and now look for mode of escape from the reservoir, which can be through respiratory or elementary or genitourinary tract or skin or mucus. And then the next thing is mode of transmission. How does it transmit to susceptible host, which it can be either direct contact like we have in HIV, blood to blood or sexual contact, or indirect contact by conveyor, or fomite. When you talk about fomite, maybe like substances, this time around like clothing or comb, substance, fomite, that is inanimate object, and it will look for mode of entry from the reservoir. Now you look for mode of entry, which is either the mode of escape from the reservoir before. It can also be like through respiratory tract or elementary tract, skin or mucous membrane, and it will look for susceptible host. For the organism to enter into the susceptible host, it has to depend on many factors like invasive procedure, age, trauma, immunosuppressive drug, metabolic disorder, nutritional status. We make this microorganism that escape through the reservoir to be able to enter into the susceptible host. What are the predisposing factors to infection? We have the age, occupation, exposure to cold, nutritional imbalance, stress, drug and other therapeutic intervention, and lifestyle. Lifestyle that can reduce your immune system will definitely predispose the individual to infection. Infection control is the effort made to maintain a microorganism-free environment. This includes improving and supporting the host defense through interskin, mucous membrane, and cilia, white blood cells, antibodies, and immunization. When the host is strong enough, when there is no any breakage in the continuity of the tissue, and the white blood cells are working as it should work, and there is immunization, antibody develop, yes, there is limit to the infection that can get into that individual. This destruction of causative organism, prevention of transmission of infective agent to others through isolation, sterilization, barrier nursing, aseptic technique, ethical aseptics, quarantine, bed spacing, proper waste disposal, and health education. So we look at them one after the other. What do we mean by barrier nursing? Barrier nursing is when the patient is not isolated in any room but nursed in an open ward and screen. Every item being used for that patient is strictly kept within him or her and is exclusively used for such patient. When you talk about isolation, a separate room or cubicle is reserved for the patient where she is nursed. This is usually done in conditions that are infectious like tuberculosis. Another means of controlling infection is by sterilization, which is a process by which all microorganisms, including their spores, are destroyed completely. There is no half measure as an item is either sterilized or not. It is achieved by subjecting the material either to heat, chemical, gamma radiation, or gases. Sterilization can be either physical or chemical. What do we mean by physical sterilization? Physical sterilization is usually accompanied by use of dry heat and radiation. This alters the internal function of the organism, thus rendering them inactive. The most common method under physical sterilization is dry and wet heat. What do we mean by dry heat? This is done by the use of an oven, which kill organism by oxidation process, while moist heat, that is by steaming, coagulate protein within the cell. Sterilization becomes effective when the heat is sufficient to destroy the microorganisms. Radiation. This is non-iodizing and ionizing radiation for physical sterilization and disinfection. They cause the death of microorganisms by altering their essential metabolic process. The most common type of non-ionizing radiation is the ultraviolet ray. Ionizing radiation is used for pharmaceuticals, food, plastic, and other heat-sensitive items. The next one is chemical method of sterilization. Chemical sterilization employs liquid solution or gases. Objects to be sterilized are immersed in the solution or exposed to fumes in a chamber for a specific time. Examples of this include ethylene oxide, chlorine compound, hibitane lotion, polyvidone iodine, and methylated spirit. Nursing intervention at every infective stage. Remember we have 3 infective stages. So physical and social isolation, nutrition, alteration in comfort, maintaining functioning of other body system, alteration in self-management. In conclusion, the development of infection of dependent on the nature of the interaction between the host and microbial agent. The stages of infection are 7-fold, and the knowledge of factors influencing the interaction of the host and microbial agent has led to more effective preventive control measures. While remarkable progress is being made to control infection, the place of health education cannot be overemphasized. Hospitals should have in place an infection control policy for the prevention and transmission of infection.